Hey, welcome to lesson 3 in this 5-lesson series called The Basics. Today I want to tie a green caddis pupa with you. This is a size 14 scud hook, and I've got a dark charcoal plastic bead on there. I've got some 80 brown unithread in my bobbin, and I've got some green dubbing, a little ultra wire, partridge feather, and some brown dubbing, and we're good to go. So let's get started. We'll tie in just behind our bead. Stop our thread just about in the middle of the shank of the hook. Remove that waste. I've got some dark green small gauge ultra wire here. I'm going to cut about a 3-inch length. And just tie that in on the side closest to us. And this will give us a little bit of a rip. So I'm going to run my thread to about halfway down the bend of the hook. I'll stop there. Looks pretty good. Okay, so we're going to tie a green pupa. You can tie this in brown, orange, yellow, cream. They're all good colors. I've got some synthetic green sparkle dub. I like this because the fibers are long, breaks up the profile of the nymph a little bit, catches little bubbles, and these long fibers will undulate in the water too, so it just looks pretty buggy. And I'm just going to dub a little bit of this, get us going here. The other nice thing about this shaggy, long length material is it gives you a bit of a rough dub look without having to mess with doing a rough dub or use a dubbing loop. So we'll just start to wind this dubbing forward. We'll have a slightly tapered abdomen, so we'll get a little bit thicker as we move forward. The synthetic dubs can be a little bit more difficult to work with than the natural, so a little bit of a balance to find where that sweet spot is between too little, where you can't get it to grab onto the thread, and too much where it's just falling off. So a little bit of practice will give you a sense of just how much you need. It's not too much. We'll just continue to build our abdomen here. Moving forward, working on that taper a little bit, and just put a little bit more on there. And I know this looks very, very shaggy, and it is, but not to worry, that's what we want. And just tighten up on our bobbin a little bit. I'm going to pull all these fibers to the rear, lay down some thread in front of them. Okay, that looks good. Come back to our ultra wire, and we're going to wind this forward as a rib. And I usually get about 5 to 6 turns on this for this size fly, and usually try to keep them fairly evenly spaced. And I keep good tension on my wire, just like I do with my thread, because I really want the wire to bite into the dubbing. I don't want it to just sit on top. So we'll wrap over our ultra wire, and I'm going to wrap in front a couple times, and we can helicopter that off now. Alright, so abdomen looks good. The fibers in some cases are a little bit longer than I want, so I'll trim those. Make sure you don't get your thread. You'll see some guys, later in the tie, they'll put some antenna on and different things, and they're cool, they look cool, but they're not really critical to having a really good Caddis Pupa pattern. It's a little unnecessary, a little extra work for you. And if you look at these fibers, like when it gets in the water and they're moving, hey, there are your antenna. Real easy. So I've got a partridge feather here, and instead of working from the tip, I'm just working from the rear, because that's closer to the length that I want for my legs. So typically you're working from the tip down. In this case I just flip the feather over. I'm working from the bottom. So we'll take this feather in this groove that we've cut, just pinch it in our left hand over the shank of the hook, and we'll lay down one wrap of thread over that feather. And then I'm just going to take a look at that. I didn't capture those fibers, so no big deal. Keep those pinched. Wrap that feather again. A little bit of thread. I'm just going to give it a little tug. I like the legs a bit long. They are fairly long on a Caddis Pupa. So these legs extend just past the bend of the hook. And that's about the length that I like them to be. You can decide for yourself what works for you, but that length generally works for me. I'm just setting these legs where I want them, not quite right yet. That looks good. So then I'll just tie over those now that they're set where I want them. Looks good. Pull this feather back. Just trim that out. Okay. I've got some dark brown dubbing, and it's a mixture of some dyed rabbit, some guard hairs, and some synthetic sparkle dub. So we get some of those nice pointy guard hairs. You get some of the sparkle and a few shaggy fibers in there too. That all kind of lend to the effect of this insect. As it moves through the water. And I like to have a slightly more bulbous thorax here for this guy than abdomen. So I'm not quite happy with that yet. Add a little bit more dubbing. Just fill this out a bit. Just a little bit more full. Like so. That looks good. Alright. Give that thread a good tug. Put a few wraps of thread behind the bead. Pick up my whip finish tool and put down a whip finish. Now I'm not going to try to get my head cement in behind this bead and between this dubbing. I really want this fly to look alive and undulate in the water. I want these shaggy fibers. So I'm not going to use the head cement, in which case I just put down a second whip finish for good measure. Rather than get head cement on any of the dubbing. Trim out our thread and we're done. Now that fiber looks a little long, so I'll trim that. But we do want a nice shaggy fly, and I think we got one. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. This is a great pattern, tied in a number of different colors. Once you get good at this pattern, you can tie it really quickly. It's easy, works just as well, if not better, than some of the quote more realistic representational Caddis Pupa patterns. Just not necessary. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in lesson 4, where we'll tie a pheasant tail nymph. Thanks a lot.